Welcome to Flight Test. I'm Stefan and this is TJ, and this is the FT210 build video. And as you can see here, we're using these components that are on our quads right now. The three different options that we have in the E-Pack are the good, better, best. And in the good one, we're looking at a plug and play model that you kind of just simple, robust, ready to fly, get it up in the air quickly, and for a great price point, at a lower price point than any of the other two. And then we have the better, right?
Yeah, better is what we're using today in the build video. And that includes the red bottom Emax motors, which even though it's not the best, they're amazing motors. It's what I actually race with. Lumineer 30 amp ESCs, BLHeli. I think they come with like 14.3, but tomorrow it'll probably be 15 something. They update so much, and that's a good thing about them is once you plug them into the flight controller, you can go right through. In this video, you'll see how we update the firmware and everything with that. So I mean, it's a really good setup, and I hope you learn a lot from it. And then after that, if you want to go to the next section for the best,
then you got your Lumineer motors, 2206s with your 30 amp ESCs, and all of these two right here, they are customizable. So when like he talks with the firmware, the software, you can upgrade it as soon as possible. So you have the latest and greatest, and that's what you're looking at. You're looking at mid price point, high price point, so you can hit that top tier level and fly at the highest performance you can possibly do. So make sure you get your stuff ready, and let's get into it.
Yeah, first thing, power distribution board, tin and stick. That means put solder on everything there's supposed to be solder on. And there is a video on soldering if you have no idea what you're doing, which when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. There's one, and all we're gonna do is your ESCs are gonna come to the corners. So we'll tin each corner, positive and negative. And then we'll tin the 5 volt and 12 volt pads right here in this line.
How long did it take you to get quality at soldering?
I still have issues sometimes. it's more of the quality of the soldering iron. A clean tip is always the best thing to use, and good solder. The 60-40 stuff is great. I tried to use the silver when I first started. And it was absolutely terrible. All right, so each corner is for our ESCs, positive and minus. 5 volt will power the nays. Ground 12 volt will run our FPV gear off of the ground 12 volt. And then this section here, the ground and the voltage will be going to the VBAT and ground on our nays, and then that way the telemetry will be able to read the actual battery voltage. So that's pretty much all we need for the power distribution board. So now we will stick it on the frame, which with this set, we want to use the longer screws and double-sided tape, and also electrical tape. The next part on the PDB is plugging in the XT60 that comes with it.
Okay.
On the XT60, you got a negative, little minus sign on that side, a little positive sign on that side. Same thing here, positive, minus. Now, these points are big, so it takes a lot of heat to really get them melted. And in doing that, this plastic will warp. So if you have another end, what's it, the female end of your XT60, always plug it in just to keep it from warping. So now this is where helping hands would come in handy, to where you can just stick them in and have it hold it, because it is a flush fit, so they won't just stay there.
You want to use these?
Oh yeah, we got a nice fancy, all kinds of hands.
Now this is from HobbyCreek.com, I think, if that's the people that sent it to us. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
They're awesome.
They're great. We use it all the time.
And just double checking. So there's probably an easier way to do this. Let's do this. Check that out. Our electrical tape is better for more things than one.
So you can either use the third hand stuff, or you can find something, common materials that you have at home that you can prop something up on.
That's a big thing about the hobby, is figuring out things that work for you while you're doing it. Yeah. So now we'll just lay the soldering iron kind of right on the lip of the XT60 and the edge, and just feed the solder into it. So the way I do it is I just like to put enough to hold it.
Okay.
And then I'll move to the other side and pretty much the same thing. And then that way, the one side, while we're heating it up and soldering it, it doesn't move around.
Right.
So if you have at least one side holding tight,
And you can
then
fix the other one.
then you can move back, and you don't have to worry about trying to fight it.
Oh, that's cool.
Because that is one of the harder things to solder, even though it seems simple. So now that we have our board complete, XT60's on solid, I'm gonna leave that in there while the connector cools. But while we're doing that, let that cool down for just a second, and then we're gonna take electrical tape and pretty much layer the bottom. And all that's gonna do is when we use our double-sided tape to put it on the frame, even though it is a little bit spaced off of the frame, if you hit something and it happens to accidentally touch, carbon will ground it out, and you'll have fireworks before the 4th of July.
Whew. Done with that.
Yeah. And if you're not in America, 4th of July is when we light off all kinds of stuff and blow them up. So now that we have it all, then just as simple as taking a knife and tracing the edges. We got cardboard down underneath, so that's the sound you're hearing. So now we have the tape fairly straight. So we'll take the drill bit and just pop a little hole straight into the tape, but you have to get there first.
Nice. Now, a nice thing about all these little tricks that you've learned is that when you do DIY projects, you kind of figure things out as you build.
Yeah.
And when you buy like a ready to fly or whatever, then you kind of don't learn these little things.
Yep.
So building a DIY project allows you to be able to fix it when you have problems, etc., which is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And I like watching you build this because I'm starting to learn some fun little tricks.
Well, it's always good if you learn. Now, like I said, it don't have to be pretty. So now we'll turn our base plate around, and what we want to do is just figure out which direction we want our PDB, and it's really up to you. I mean, actually it's up to you. Which side do you want to go on, left or right?
You know what?
It don't matter.
I'm feeling a little bit I'm a little lefty today.
There you go, we'll go left. So that's where we're going to line it up. We have the holes here that our screws go through, and we're going to use the M3 17mm screws. So we need 4 of them. Push them through the frame and just let them sit. So this way it'll allow us to put the tape on our PDB and then just slide them over the screws. 3M, I buy Walmart out of stock every chance I can. This stuff is gold in this hobby. So just, it don't have to be pretty. I've said it a few times. Just take a couple pieces, slap them on here.
And thanks to Chad for donating his 3M tape today.
Yeah, there we go.
Chad Lewis.
I'll just cut off the excess. So I mean, you can use as much or as little as you want. I mean, 1 layer is definitely sufficient. If you're worried about, even with the insulation, if you want to get it a little bit further, just to peel the tape or peel the paper off, put another layer of tape on it.
Gotcha.
But for what we're doing, this is fine.
That's the only thing I don't like about 3M tape. It's really hard to get that sticky stuff
But that's
off.
a good thing.
It is.
Because that means it's sticky.
Right.
You definitely don't ever want to fault tape for being sticky.
That's right. It's got one job. Literally one job.
So we'll just line the screws up over the holes that we kind of poked with the drill bit. It's a little stiff. There we go. And
now what I've also seen is some people do put standoffs underneath, so that the power distribution board is raised up a little bit sometimes.
And that's what I like about this kit, is there's so many extra parts that you really have the ability to do however you want to. There's 8 of the little standoffs, so you can put standoffs under your board, above your board, and then put your FC. You have the little bit taller standoffs if you need more space for whatever you want to put in it. If you want to put your flight controller directly on to the standoffs, how we had it, just use the 17mm screws and then the nuts just to cinch it down. Now, the way I personally do it is I always like to put just the rubber O-rings underneath of my board. On this one, we went ahead and used the included 20mm screws and 8 O-rings below and above the Naze Revision 6. And we just tighten the nuts down just enough to where you see the O-rings start to a little bit deform. And all that does is that allows our board to kind of be isolated from any major vibrations, and it tends to give you a little bit smoother flight, and my personal preference is this. So I mean, it's a very flexible kit. So now that we have these screws in it, since we're talking standoffs, we'll go ahead and put 4 of the standoffs on.
For the miniature ones?
Yeah, 4 of the miniature ones, just to hold,
Everything down?
Yeah, more so just to hold the screws in.
Right.
Even though it was a little tight to get the board down, I don't want the screws falling out as we're moving around.
That's a great idea.
And we won't really tighten them down too much, but we will snug them up just a little bit. And we'll worry about tightening them down later. All right, so now that we have the power distribution on and this little standoffs just holding it into place, the next thing I like to do is motors.
Okay.
I like to build from the outside in. So I get this part just pre-soldered, ready to rock, to know where my wire is going to finally end up.
Right.
And then I'll start, next will be motors, ESCs, and we'll go from there. So we'll start unpackaging motors.
Ooh.
Nice brand new red bottoms.
Ooh.
It's a Power Pack E.
Yes.
Think
There's
so,
3
right?
different sets of
Yeah.
Power Pack E.
And this is the better.
Yes.
So-
Good, better, best. This is
Yeah.
the middle one.
Middle of the road, but definitely not middle power.
Right.
I mean, it's still,
Quality.
yeah, definitely quality. This is what I actually raced in the Nationals last week.
Oh, really?
Those red bottoms, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so they're definitely good. So in the kits, you have 2 different size screws. And the best way I'd like to do it, just in case you have a different motor and you forewent the red bottoms, just take your motor screw and run it through and see how many threads you have left. And if you're still not sure, just line your motor up. The goal is to have the screw not touch the windings, because it's going to either A, give you weird flight characteristics, or B, burn the motor up.
Right, so short the motor out essentially.
Yeah. So with these longer screws, they look fine. We can just go ahead and double check the shorter ones. Not enough threads is just as bad as too many threads, because I think you had that issue yesterday.
I did. I was flying my 210 around, and on one of my motors I had
that'll be fine.
smaller screws. Yeah, smaller. I'd go with smaller.
Yeah. But yeah, so you were saying you were flying around.
And I crashed. Everything was fine except one of the motors popped off because of the screws were not threaded in enough. Because I was worried about that same issue. I didn't want to short out the motor.
So on these screws, I want to say these are 3 mil screws. Yes. So it takes the 3 mil thing. However, Emax comes with them.
Boom.
So for every 1 motor you get a tool.
That's great.
I have so many tools.
So many tools.
So many tools. Now you can use Loctite if you do so.
Prefer.
Yeah, I mean it's whatever you want. I haven't really ever used it, and I haven't had a need to use it.
Okay.
But I
more of a
also
preferential thing.
Yeah, I also check my motors and everything kind of prior to especially a race,
Right.
just to make sure everything's still snug. So I just kind of start all my screws,
Right.
and then do them just like a car tire. And if you've never put a car tire on, you just start on one side, go to the opposite side, snug them up, and then you cinch them down the same way.
Right.
And that just allows the motor not to be in a bind. Got my big meat hooks in the way here. So just snug them up, and then we'll go back around. So all snug, and that one's tight. That one's tight. Now again, you don't want to go crazy with them, because these screws will strip out, and that is a bad thing.
Yep. Don't want that.
Yeah, especially if they strip out inside the motor, and then you're looking at a bad issue. So now we'll just go through, put the other 3 motors on, and then ESCs, baby.
Nice.
And one other thing while we're at it, just so you don't lose them, these motors come with multiple prop nuts.
Yes.
But
I think there's 3 or 4 in each.
Yeah, 3 or 4, or 3 prop nuts in each motor.
Yep.
But throw one on there so you're not looking for one later.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah. So now, let's open up the rest of them. Oh, here, pro tip. These containers are good if you are looking for camera tilt.
Ah, okay.
So my GoPros are actually tilted most of the time by this little chunk of foam here. So I take this foam, get a razor blade, and whatever kind of angle I'm looking at, just chop it in half.
Diagonal.
Yeah, man, I've got a camera tilt block right there for, free.
Thank you,
free
Emacs,
with the motor.
for the free camera tilt.
Yeah, I mean, always reuse what you got. So once you have all 4 motors on, now we have all these long dangly wires, which if you want to use bullet connectors,
Totally can.
nothing wrong with it. Yeah, I mean, you can do it however you want to do it. For me, I like, not really for the look so much, it's just the ease of the build. I'd like to cut everything down, direct solder it. So let's go ahead and remove this because we don't need it in there no more.
Boom.
And we will start with the ESCs. We have 4 30 amp BLHelis.
Lumineers.
Yep, Lumineers, and they come in which kit?
They come in both the better and the best.
There
packs.
you go.
So the ones with the Lumineer motors and the ones with the Emacs motors.
So now on these, we will have to do a little bit of preparation with them.
True.
So obviously, if we're going to be cutting and soldering, if you want a direct connect, the cool thing about the kits is everything comes with bullet connectors. So you can just go through, stick everything together, plug it in and go. But for this build, we're going to de-shrink our ESCs and remove these wires, and we will keep these on this side. So these are going to be cut down to length for our power distribution board. And then this here is the same thing. We're going to remove the connector and direct solder.
All right.
So this next step, we're just going to be preparing the ESCs. If you go this route,
gotta be careful, right?
yeah. Be sure you know what you're doing, because I mean, right here, these little chips are right next to where we're going to be soldering. So if you accidentally heat these up a little too much and these chips lift off, you're done. Yeah, and once you remove the heat shrink, there is no warranty.
Oh.
So
dang.
Yeah, so this is for a more advanced.
So you're foregoing everything.
Oh
when
yeah.
you take that off.
Yeah, we're full in at this point.
Bye warranty.
Yeah, goodbye.
See you later. Thanks for playing.
So yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Since we're not going to remove this side, you can just peel this halfway back, remove these motor wires, solder the new motor wires on, and then tape it back down.
Okay.
However you want to do it is fine. For the way I usually do it, I just remove everything, solder and motor wires on, and then I just double side stick tape it directly to the arm.
Okay.
And then put the motor wires and everything, and we'll get to that in a minute. So for the sake of my build, I'm just going to remove all of the tape, and just be very careful. It is a very sharp knife, and if you slip and hit one of these components again, our warranty is gone as soon as you cut into this. Just take it right down the side of the ESC and peel it back, or just rip it.
I ripped mine.
However works. And we still get to keep a little sticker on the back, I think.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pretty.
That's nice.
Yeah. So there we go. So now we'll just take it one step at a time, remove the heat shrink on all of them, and then go through and take all of the motor wires off. All right, so now that we have all the heat shrink off of all of them, now we got to remove our motor wires. And like I said, the space between the wires and the chips are very small. So you want just enough heat to be able to pull the wires off. And if you have too much heat, there's little pads under the solder that you'll pull off with it. And if you do that, you're pretty much done. So the easiest way that I've found to do it, it's not really good for a camera, is I just kind of take 2 fingers, hold onto the wire, one on the ESC, and I just put a little tension. Yeah. Not a lot, just enough.
So it just pops off?
Yeah, just enough to when it heats up, it'll kind of just peel back. And this solder that most companies use is not the 6040 that we tend to use. It has what is it? I think it's silver in it. It's a little bit harder to heat up and pull off, so just be safe with it.
Peter once time told me was to put some solder at the little bit of the tip of the edge there, and then it will come off a little bit easier.
Yep.
From what he was saying to me, that's one of the little tricks that he taught me.
See, even people that's been doing this for a minute learn stuff every day. I didn't even think about it. So yeah, right there. That's a good test, because the first one I did took a little bit longer than the second one. Yeah.
And then you risk the heating up the ESC too much and losing some stuff.
So now that we have those off, this one is pretty much good. If you wanted to, so you can just heat that solder up a little bit to help it. And another thing I like to do is, the solder's not bad, so you can go through and remove all the solder off of this just to have a clean slate to work with. Or what I like to do is just take a little bit of the 6040 and just tap it in with that solder, and it just gives you, when you go to solder the motor wires on it here in a bit, it's just so much easier.
Nice.
And it goes to better, just pretty much like you said with putting solder on the tip. It helps get it,
kind of greases the greases it a little bit.
Exactly. So same thing, just heat that up a little bit, pull it off. And I'm throwing these away, but there's really no reason to, because right there you got a bullet connector and a little piece of wire. If you want to use it for something later, it's always good.
Because you could essentially, because you didn't cut it, you could put it back on later if you needed to, right?
Yeah, you can always use them for something. So we have all the motor wires off.
Nice.
So the next step is I kind of just line up the ESC about where I want to put it. And for this, obviously we don't want to cut our motor wires way too short.
Right.
But at the same time, I want the ESC to be kind of in the middle of the arm. So we're going to line it up about here. And then on our motor wires, we want a little bit of flex in them. So when we put them on, I want them to kind of look like that. Just a little bend right before they go into the ESC. So we'll lay it down and get our side cutters.
There they are.
And these, where they're flat, this is the way I do it, is lay these here and just a little bit past the solder point, cut that one off. And then the other two, I just flush up with it and cut those flat right along with that one.
Gotta make sure you don't cut your fingers.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're nervous about this part, it's better to leave them a little bit long,
right,
than to cut them too short.
I've done that in the past, where make sure that I can move them around if needed or whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, at this point, if you cut them, 1/4 inch too short, yeah, we can rerun these a little bit longer, but then you start getting into the heat shrink,
right?
And then it just becomes harder than it needs to be. A little more of a problem. Yeah, harder than it needs to be. So right now we're just gonna go through, get all 4 motors lined up the same way, and then we'll come back, strip, and tin. So now that we have all 4 motors cut down to the size we want, and then you can use wire strippers, razor blade, however you want to do it, just so you don't cut the wire any shorter. So I've been doing it for years, where I just use my side cutters, squeeze just a little bit, and slide it right off.
Watch out, bottoms away.
Yeah, and you don't need to strip off a lot. Like this right here is actually probably a little too much.
Yeah.
Because the pads that we're soldering onto are very,
huge.
very, well, I mean, they're really tiny.
Yeah, they're not very
compared.
big.
So like, if you solder on just the tip of that, you've got space left.
Yep.
So
which you run the risk of.
Yeah. So I mean, worst case, if you do strip it a little too far, all you have to do is once we solder it, or once we tin them up, then we can just come back through and snip off the tips of them, which is not a big deal, and just twist the ends together a little bit just to help all the wires.
Fray.
Yeah, just to help all the wires, because once you go to solder them, if they're not twisted together, they have a tendency to try to
fray outwards.
Yeah, try to fray outwards. So we just went through, we stripped all, what's that? 12. Math is hard.
It's tough.
Yeah, we stripped all 12 of the wires.
Ooh, watch where you're pointing that thing, man.
And now all we're going to do is go through and just tin all 12 wires and get them ready for the ESCs.
What you're doing is making it to where it's easier to solder directly to those pads.
Yep.
Kind of like what you did with the tip of the soldering iron,
yep.
essentially. Okay.
Yep. Pretty much you go through, you have solder on these, we have solder on the ESCs. When you put them together and just hit them with a little bit of heat,
they bind together?
They will bond.
Nice.
And 3 more to go. And just like with the ESCs, you don't want to leave the heat on them too long, because then you'll start to melt your
shrink
yeah, you'll start to melt the heat shrink on them. So that's as easy as that gets, man.
That was fast.
That was fast.
Lightning.
Yes.
Quicksilver.
So again, like we did with the PDB earlier, remember we put the heat shrink or the electrical tape on the bottom of it. Just like the PDB, you don't have to do this step, especially if you use double-sided tape on the bottom of your ESCs. But I like to do just one layer of a little bit of electrical tape where my ESCs are going to sit.
Okay.
All right. So just to double check where we're at. So that's pretty much where it's going to lay. And for another step here later, when we put these on the arms, I want to make sure that the back end of this ESC is on the side of the arm that I can actually wrap around, you know, for the electrical tape that I'm going to use here in a bit. So again, this is your build, so however you want to do it. But since this one is my build, this is how I'm doing it. So just a little piece of double-sided tape. And let's go ahead and remove the sticker if it comes off easy. There we go.
And that's the nice thing about DIY projects is it's kind of, you know, whatever you personally want it to look like or feel like. As long as everything's programmed correctly and everything's soldered correctly, you can kind of make your quad or your plane or whatever RC that you enjoy flying, make it look like what you want it to look like.
Yep. And if you figure out something that works really well for you, share it.
Awesome.
Go to the forums. Let everybody else know about it.
Forums, Facebook.
I don't care how new you are. You may know something that somebody else doesn't.
True. So true.
So now this is a point that I like to have tweezers.
Tweezers.
And there's tweezers.
There we go.
Good set of tweezers.
Here at the shop, you can always find something
Oh
that you
yeah.
need.
Because with these little short wires and these big meaty fingers, it don't work. So
plus it gets hot.
yeah, very.
Burn your
Very
fingers
hot.
off. Fingertips at least.
Yeah, so you just grab the wire, and I like to bend it to where it's kind of in the direction it needs to go.
Nice.
To help it along to where all I have to do is just kind of hold it into place.
Give it a little pressure, give it a little heat, and let it bind.
Maybe that's it. And then all we got to do is just lay the soldering iron on it for just a second. And
Oh yeah.
and just pull that back a little bit. It didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to.
There we go.
There we go.
Nice.
That looked better.
Looks way better. Actually, it looked fine to begin with, but it does look better.
So same thing again. A little bit of heat, let it melt, and pull it off immediately.
That solder stuff, it cools quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and if you're having issues, a little blow on it, and man, it'll set immediately. And so that one is good for now. And on the motor wires, we're just going straight across, because before, you know, if you had to change motor directions, you needed to switch motor wires around. For us, we're not going to worry about that. Once we have the motor wires on for all of them, then we can finalize the ESCs, and we'll actually switch motor directions inside the BLHeli software. All right, so all we did is we went through 3M double-sided stick tape our ESCs down on each arm, and then just soldered all motor wires to the ESCs. And again, like we said, it doesn't matter the order that your motor wires are in, because we're going to change the direction of the motors within the BLHeli software later.
Okay, perfect.
So nice and easy. And at this point, you can do it one of two ways. We could go ahead and finalize the arms completely, as in the way I like to do it is while you're flying, if you hit something and this prop decides it's going to bend down, especially with the durable series props that we have now, whether they're Dow, HQ, or what, instead of braking, your props are going to bend. And if your motor or your motor's going this direction and your prop bends and it comes down and hits your ESC, you just lost a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example is right here. This is my previous build, and if you look at the heat shrink,
It got clipped.
yeah, if you look at the heat shrink right here, that's already been hit by a prop. So a good way to fix that is just to measure a piece of one of these durable props and just snip it off. And you don't have to use new props. These are an old set that I used last weekend. Just measure it over your ESC, and then, I mean, you can heat shrink it however you want. I just like to keep it simple. A little bit of electrical tape wrapped around the arm to hold this into place.
Nice.
And I don't go crazy tight with it because in the same instance, this will protect it. But I want it to be able to give a little bit instead of just hitting solid, you know.
Cool.
So we're going to leave them naked for right now.
Yeah.
And then that way when we get to the point where we're actually testing everything in the software, if something's not right, we don't have to untape it and look at it. We can see where we're at. So
true.
With that said, on this step, the next part that I will do is all of these signal wires we don't need yet. So we'll just pull those out of the way. However, we do want to go through and all of our positive and negative wires on our ESCs. We're going to cut those down to length. Cut them, strip them,
Solder them?
tin them, solder them.
Tin them, solder them.
Yep.
Don't forget the tinning.
And red is positive, black is negative. And on this PDB, you have a negative here, positive here. They do not correspond to our wires. So we just flip these two around. And since we have them flipped around, same thing we did earlier, man. If you bring it around, leave yourself just a little bit of slack, just so you can move stuff around. And you want to cut the wire just on the back side of that solder pad. And easy enough. So the black one's done. Do the same thing on the red one. Kind of line it up, leave yourself a little slack, cut it down the sides right on the back side of the solder pad.
Nice.
So we'll go through, do it to the other 3 ESCs.
And when you leave enough slack, sometimes if you don't, you know, make the sticky pad on the bottom of the ESC, sometimes it will move up while you're flying if you don't secure it.
Yeah.
And then you also get that slice in it.
Yeah, exactly. I think Austin actually was having that issue the other day because his ESCs were just laying and they started moving around a little bit. Oof. Alrighty, now that we have everything cut down the size, now you may remember a step that kind of looked like this.
Yeah.
All we're going to do is go through, strip all of them, and instead of going through stripping them all and then tinning them, we'll just do it one ESC at a time. Just for the sake of what we're doing right now. So we'll go ahead and solder these down too while we're at it. So we'll take the black one over to negative, just bend it down a little bit and lay it on. It may take a minute to heat up the pad since there is a lot of solder here. Once it melts, let her up. Nice. Nice and easy, nice and easy.
Well played. Those tweezers are coming in handy, huh?
Yeah, man, I love my tweezers. I use them so much. If I had to pick 2 tools that I could not live without, besides the M2 wrench for building quads, it's a good set of tweezers, good set of side cutters.
So 3.
Yeah, 3. 3.
It's all good.
Who's counting?
Who's counting?
But yeah, these are a lifesaver for me. I can do just about everything I need to do.
Perfect.
With these.
So now, as Josh Bixer always says, now do this and repeat this on the other side.
Yeah, and repeat this on the other 3 sides.
Oh, the 3 sides.
Of this.
Complete the square.
Yeah, of this X square something. Let's throw some solder on that. See, I almost forgot a step. Almost went straight from stripping to soldering, and I didn't tin.
Now, if you don't tin, does that, I mean, is it just going to affect the ability to solder onto that pad a little bit? Because it'll still solder, correct?
It'll still solder.
It just won't be as effective.
You'll probably be fine. But
you want to make sure that you tin everything.
So I'm not an expert. I've just done it a lot. When I was learning how to do this, the people that I watched was like, this is how you do it. So this is how you do it. If you don't have a fan to blow the solder smoke away, get a friend. This is teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm cracking up right now. So at this point, started off power distribution board, tinned everything up, got it ready to solder. Double-sided sticky tape on the bottom, put the screws in the frame, slid the power distribution board down and secured it with the little standoffs. Then we went through, put all 4 motors on the frame, cut the motor wires down to size, stripped them, and tinned them. And then we had the ESCs, de-heat shrinked the ESCs, took the motor wires off the ESCs, put the motor wires back on the ESCs, and double size sticky tape the ESCs down, put the positive and negative of all 4 ESCs down to size, cut, strip, tin, soldered. So now that's where we're at. So the next step for me, the way I like to do these, is we're going to need a wire that goes from the ground and voltage of directly off your battery, which on this power distribution board, there's a ground of VCC right here behind your LiPo. And so we'll just need a short piece of wire to go from here to the nays. And all that's going to do is allow our nays to read the battery voltage itself. These ESCs we're using actually have a 5-volt BEC built into them. So we don't need to run a line off of our 5-volt for the nays for power.
Oh, cool.
So after that, 1 wire for the nays straight to the battery, and our FPV gear will run to the 12-volt and ground.
Perfect.
And as long as you're using the same stuff we're using here, that works great. If you're using a different kind of FPV gear, different kind of camera, you may want to go in and check the voltages.
So you don't burn anything up.
Yeah, so they don't, because they may not be rated for 12 volt. They may only be rated for 5.
Okay.
So just be aware of what you're actually working with.
Good to know.
So we'll reach right here. This is our VTX. It's just a Lumineer TX5 G2R, 200 milliwatt. If you're going to fly with friends, I prefer the 200 milliwatt.
Right.
Especially if you're going to race.
Less interference, right?
Yeah, less interference. If you're flying with somebody that has a 600 and you have a 25, that 600 is going to blow you out of the sky, quite literally. If you're flying and he powers up, you're not going to fly no more. So the 200s are good. Actually, most race leagues require 200 or less. So it's a good all around. If you're going to be flying by yourself, by all means, use what you want. So we'll just set this aside for now. We don't actually need it. We're not going to plug it in yet. We do need the cable that comes with it. And all we're going to do is on your cable, you have the red and black wire on one side. And then on this side, there's a red, a brownish looking wire, and a yellow. So this one is for your camera. And what this does is it provides a 5-volt output from your VTX to your camera.
Okay.
And the red and the black will come straight off our 12-volt and ground to our VTX. Perfect. And if you just want to measure to see where it's at, you can plug it into your VTX and just wherever you plan on putting it. You know, if you're going to put it up close to the top, close to the bottom, however you want. I like to leave a little slack so if I change my mind later, I can always change it. And just like we've done multiple times throughout the build earlier, take your red and black, measure it out to where the 12 volt and the ground are, which they're perfectly labeled right here, 12V and GND. Leave yourself a little bit of slack. And let's see here. Use your thumbnail and just kind of crease the wires. And then that way you don't have to really kind of
find
pay
it
attention.
again.
Yeah. You see where your crease is, just come in here and cut it. And then the next thing we'll do is while we're at it, we can go ahead and cut it for the camera. Now on the camera itself, let's unbox it. My oldest watches so many videos and they call it unboxing. And I'm always looking at him going, it's called open.
It's called open.
So let's open the camera. So here's our camera we're going to use. It's the Runcam Swift. And this is my personally preferred camera. But whatever you have is fine. So in here, you have a big bunch of wires. Just pull all this stuff out. So there's all kinds of stuff here. I've never used this. Pretty much all this one's going to be for is if you wanted to plug it into a TV, just take those two, throw it away. We don't need it. Yeah, we don't need it. Done. So this is our wire that is going to plug in to our VTX and power. And on this camera here, if you look at the side of the box, it tells us it runs off of 5 volt to 17 volt. So these VTX have a 5-volt out, and that's what this wire is here. So as long as it holds good voltage, you're fine. And I've used these so much that I know for a fact that that voltage is good for the Swift.
Perfect.
So all we're gonna have to do is, obviously, we don't wanna just plug this in and go, because that's a lot.
A lot of wire.
Yeah, a lot of wire. So our camera is gonna sit roughly here. So we can go ahead and plug this in. You got 2 connections, one for your camera and one for this cable here, which we'll touch base on here in a minute. So just plug your camera in, get it spotted in, spot your VTX where you want it. And like we've done everything else, leave a little slack. You don't need to go crazy with it, but at the same time, you don't want it too long. So then we'll just cut them down a little bit to size. And then the goal is going to be to solder all these together. And we'll cut these a little bit longer here. So all this extra wire. Keep this, we'll reuse it here in a minute. So now, we don't need to have all this on our wires. Lay it on the side. And these here, this is a little bit of a long step, but what we're going to do is we've got red, black, and yellow. We're going to trim them, or strip them, solder them. Same thing here, strip them, solder them, then we're going to put them together. The way I like doing it is we'll do it just on the yellow one here. I leave it a little long, twist it together, and we'll do the yellow one here. Same thing, leave it a little long, twist it together. And this is where we tin them. You can lay them on the edge of your table or use the helping hands, whatever you prefer. Alright. And this is a very sensitive part. You don't want to leave it on too much because this wire is very thin and you will melt that heat shrink if you're not careful.
For sure. So
at this point, you can do it one of 2 ways. Some people just take them, lay them together, and solder them together. We need a little piece of heat shrink. This may be a little big, but we're going to try it out. So just a little piece of heat shrink will make it fine. If you don't have heat shrink, electrical tape does work. It's not ideal, but use what you have. So now the way I've always done it is I just bend the end of the wire a little bit, make a little hook. Same thing on this side. Bend the wire a little bit, make a little hook. And especially if you're like me and you work alone a lot, this is so easy. So you hook them together, squeeze each end down so they don't flop around.
Wait, they don't separate while you're soldering them?
Yeah, exactly. So
nice.
You got them hooked together, just lay them down, towards off the table. Get your soldering iron, a little bit of solder. And done. That's all we gotta do. Quit jumping, you're scared.
Dude,
So now, I mean, that's solid, it's not gonna go anywhere. So that's the way I prefer to do it. It takes a little bit more time, but it's easy if you're alone. Put your heat shrink over it. We have a heat gun right here. Just shrink it down a little bit. And there's one. So now we'll just do the same thing. Remember, these 2 on this side are for the power off the battery. So the lighter brown and the lighter colored red are going to go together for our camera.
So the red and the red, and then the black and the brownish red.
Yeah. Correct. And if you're not sure, each one of these comes with a little diagram that actually shows you what the outputs are.
Right.
And that way you don't, if you second guess yourself, look it up. Yep. You don't want to take a shortcut and waste money.
Explode something.
Yeah. So now we'll just go through here and do the other 2 wires. Sweet. All right. All I want to do is just hold these 3 wires together. Just a little piece of electrical tape or heat shrink, however you want to do it, just so they're not flopping around.
Nice.
So now, the part that we started off talking about, will be the power and the ground to the 12 volt in the ground for the VTX and camera. And just strip off the ends of the wire, twist them, and gotta quit losing my solder. My builds would be so much faster if I wasn't spending most of my time looking for something that I just set down. So there's that.
Nice.
And my trusty dusty tweezers. So ground in the center. Down. And 12 volt over here. Good.
Boom.
This will lay just like so. You got your VTX side and your camera side.
Nice.
Ready to rock.
Looks good. Looks
Yep.
clean.
So now, this is where we're going to reuse a little bit of wire. This is going to be from the VCC, so just straight off the battery, to our nays. And all this is for is telemetry on your radio if you want to use it. And just like those on the edge. Thanks, sir.
Welcome, sir.
So this is just for straight from the battery, so this VCC pad here. And the ground right beside of it. All this is going to be is going to our nays. On the nays there's a port that's for the battery, so it's direct from voltage and ground. So all it's going to do is read the actual battery voltage for telemetry.
Oh, nice.
So at this point we're ready for the nays. Alright, so on this one it's pointing straight at us. So there's an arrow here, and anybody that's doing this build video most likely is going to kind of know about this. So
yes,
we'll point the arrow towards us, front of the quad. On the bottom it labels everything. So the VCC and ground that we ran before to the P2V just now, that's going to go to the battery and ground ports here.
Okay.
And the motors be motor 1, 2, 3, and 4 right here with your motor mounts. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have a signal, positive, and ground. Ground's on the outside edge. And anybody that's doing this video this in depth should know how to do this. If you don't, that's why we're making the video. On this side here, you have your ground, 5 volt and PPM1. That'll come into play for our receiver here shortly. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to plug our voltage into the ground and battery, and then we're going to start off with the ESC wires. So yeah, we're just going to lay it here and leave a little slack, so that way if we need to work on a board we can actually pull it up and work on it. So I'm going to snip these, strip, twist, 10. That's becoming a theme. So we'll just leave these a little long, and if you look on the bottom here, ground and battery, ground's on the outside edge. So I'll just take the ground, run it up through, and the positive, run it up through. And I always like just kind of sticking it back on the screw just to hold it. Oh, sorry, brother.
You good, man?
And like I've said quite a few times, don't put too much heat. Just enough to get the solder to melt, and that's all you need to do. And if you've left them a little long, just take your side cutters and trim off the tips. And we've got that and enough slack that we can move the board around.
Nice.
So that's a big deal. So now we'll start. I'm gonna flip this around this direction to where the back of the quad's facing us. Motor 1 is gonna be here, 2, 3, and 4. And lay this down. So now we need to line up our motor wire, leave a little slack, trim it, strip it, tin it,
Twist it.
yeah, in some order thereof. So there is one thing that if you're new to this, each one of these has a BEC on it, each one of these has power on it. Before there used to be a lot of people saying you needed to remove all but one of the powers. That's not really the case. You can leave them on just fine. Same thing for the grounds. It's been a lot of confusion about that. Some people say take the grounds off as far as the signal grounds. Some say leave them on. I've made quite a number of quads where I've left all 3 wires on, wired it up, everything runs perfect. So don't worry, be happy now. You don't want too much solder on the end of that. Makes it kind of hard to go through the board. Alright. Now, just like we did earlier, I want to go ahead and get all of these prepared. So once I get them onto the board, we're pretty much pretty quickly getting finished. So now we have everything cut, stripped, tinned. Now the step is solder. So now motor 1 is going to go to pin 1, signals on the inside, grounds on the outside, which leaves red center. So I'll just flip this over, put signal in here, hopefully. Yeah. So signals in, and we're just going to go ahead and tack it in. With all 3 wires, it gets kind of weird trying to get them all in together, so just be light with your heat. You don't want to go crazy with it. Get that one in. Sorry. Use our tweezers to twist the red around. Sometimes you may have a little bit too much solder on a point like that, and if it won't go through the hole, just get your soldering gun and try to squeeze them up a little bit. Make it a little bit easier to go in. So all I do is just put a little heat on it and help the wires squeeze together some, and slide straight through. And same thing again. We'll bend it over. A little bit of solder, a little bit of heat.
You peek open.
Yeah. Nice. All I do is just remove a little piece of the end to make it go through the through hole pad a little easier. So there is motor 1. So now we'll just go through. Motor 1 is done. Like before, it's a little long, so let's go here and trim those off. So 1 is done. Now I'm gonna go through 2, 3, and 4 and get all those soldered in directly to their corresponding 2, 3, and 4. So we have all motors, all 1, 2, 3, 4 motors soldered in. Where we ran them pretty much to length. You have some play to pull the board up and work on it, but not much. And that's kind of what we want. We want them long enough to be able to move the board around, but at the same time, I want to keep it kind of neat. The board will end up just popping down right there. So the only thing at this point that we're missing that you can put on is a buzzer, which is not here, that we're not going to use today, and B, we need to put our receiver in. And it's kind of hard to see it now since we're in this direction. Ground, 5 volt, and PPM 1 will be in these 3 top pads. And we'll grab our receiver. Today we're going to use the D4R2 FR Sky.
Boom.
Personally, I prefer the X4R, which I think might soon be in the store. Just for the S-Bus. It's a little bit faster.
Okay.
As far as listening to your control input, I guess you could say. So since we're going to use this for PPM, you need a jumper, number 3 and 4, signal. So you got minus, plus, 3 and 4. Just put a jumper across it like that. And it comes with 2 of them. So you put that there, and then that means pad 1, which is this top row, is going to be for PPM. And we need to find a little cable, and it comes with these other cables that look like this. This will be for your telemetry, but we're not going to set up telemetry in this. All we're interested in is the receiver. So we're just going to take one of our ESC signal lines that we cut off earlier and reuse it. Signal will be on the outside, so we'll put the white wire on the outside, grounds on the inside. And depending on where you want to run it, I'm going to leave it this long so we can have a little bit of flexibility with it.
That's a good idea.
And just like before, strip, tin, then we're going to put it into our board.
Solder.
Yeah. So now once we stripped it, now we tinned it. So now it's going to be to plug it into the board. So we'll flip the board up here just a little bit. And again, the black wire is going to go to ground. Red is right here, 5 volt. And PPM 1 is where our white signal line is going to go. So this one is a little bit difficult with the board being how it is. So we're going to do the best we can with it. Put the ground in first just so it will hold the board.
You know, ground, it's a good solid ground to stand on, you know what I'm saying?
Bingo. See, you're a smart guy. I like having you around.
Hey, thanks, man. I like having you around. Thanks for building me my quad, by the way.
Yeah, man. Just don't let it fly away.
Fail safe, better fail safe.
Hey,
Sorry.
at least he's not making you just tether your stuff yet.
Right, that's true.
So all we're doing is tapping a little bit of solder on here. And we'll run it to the back. Trim off these little excess edges. Make sure none of them's on the board. And now, we're pretty much done. It doesn't look done, but we're done. All we need to do is come through here, route some wires, kind of wherever you want to put them. I just like to leave mine as far off the side as we can because that's where our props are going to be spinning. Just put those in, and don't be afraid if you're worried about any of your wires bending and fraying. You can use hot glue or a liquid electrical tape, however you want to do it, just to take some of the stress off the wires. I'm not too worried about it. Once we put this board on, it's not going anywhere. And this little bag, it's just a self-locking 9-piece nuts. You'll have it in your kit. We just want to use 4 of these just to hold our nays down. And if you have nylon or little nylon nuts, you can use those. There's nothing wrong with it. We're using these because this is what we have. And they will hold your board solid. Yay.
Lock nuts.
Lock nuts, baby.
Locking it up.
And little M3 wrench. So this is a part that may be nice with a friend. So M2 screw on the bottom and nut. Don't go too crazy with it because I mean they are lock nuts, so you don't really have to worry about them backing out. Just snug them up.
I like that catchphrase, snug them up.
Snug them up here. You want to hold that?
Yeah, hold that for you.
Hold that. Building with a friend is always fun.
Dun, 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 dun.
And that feels pretty good. We'll go to the next one. This one, just be careful with that USB port.
Yep, I gotta go at a little diagonal.
Yeah, a little angle, because we don't want to bend that, because that's not good. We need.
Plus, if you tighten them the other 3 down,
yeah,
you're gonna be all right.
they're not going to go anywhere. All right, so look how pretty that's looking.
Oh, that's great.
That's looking pretty good.
It's a clean looking build.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty proud of it so far. So we'll just start plugging stuff in. Really, at this point, we'll just pull this off to get it out of the way for a second. On here, we have 2 different size screws. We have the M3 8mm and an M3 6mm for the base plate. And going into our standoffs, I want to use the 8mm. So we need 6 of those.
Okay.
We'll just get a little pile of them out of here. And we need our long standoffs. So let's take one of these. Again, if you want to use Loctite, you're more than welcome to. If you do, I would just use the blue stuff because it's I think it's the medium. It tends to come off a little bit easier. And even if you just use the medium, you may end up stripping a screw if you ever need to take it back out. So 2 standoffs. We'll tighten it down here in a bit when we get to that point.
Yeah, I've noticed that the standoffs, they work pretty well with self-tightening.
Yeah, you don't have to get crazy with it. Especially these nice fancy collars.
Yeah,
I like them.
And yeah, these are available on the store. They're in blue, green, and red.
So when you order this kit, can you choose the color?
I believe so. Yes.
Nice.
So you can kind of designate which color you prefer, and then kind of go from there.
That's awesome. And we'll wait to tighten them up once we put the top plate on. All right, one thing I did do off camera just now was I just lifted the board back up, and our receiver cable, I just ran to the front because I changed my mind how I wanted to do it. So our VTX is going to be in the back. I'm just going to take this, and number 1 is on top. So we're going to plug it in here, and then I'm just going to double side tape it straight on top of our nays.
That's clean.
And it looks good to me. I mean, once we put the VTX in and we run these wires up straight out, because these wires are the antennas are a little long, so this will allow us to save a little bit of room on those. But it looks better to me. So I'm going to go ahead and double side sticky tape, stick that receiver down, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And again, you can do this however you want it, your build. So we're going to have to leave it a little far back just to allow room for the camera. So now with the camera, we're just using a RunCam Swift, and on these plates you can put them either direction you want. However, if you look at the plates, the top little lip is shorter than the bottom lip. So the bottom one is going to go into the base plate since it's longer. So it's just going to slide straight in like that. You can do it to where the hole's out front or in the back. I prefer it where the hole's a little bit closer to the front, and that's going to allow me to get a little bit more camera tilt on my camera. If you're using a camera like the RunCam Owl Plus, here's a RunCam Owl Plus, and the lens is a little wide, so it doesn't allow us to really get much tilt on it. And however, the body is wide, so these plates, when we flip them around to be able to get more tilt, the body won't allow us to do that. So a good in-between, just for a kind of a DIY thing, is if you have to drill another little hole in this camera plate, have at it. You know, however you think is better. For us, since we're using the Swift,
It doesn't matter.
yeah, everything should work out. And you can use the little screws to hold your camera in if you want. The way this frame is built, you don't have to.
Right.
So we're just going to put the camera in like that. Make sure we've got the long tabs on the bottom. And the one bad thing about having everything cut just to size is it gets a little tricky when you go to plug stuff in. But it makes it pretty. So we have our tabs in. We'll tilt our camera forward a little bit. And with our camera tilted forward, take our tweezers, power's on the outside. So this connector is going to be switched around like so. And we'll just plug it straight into the bottom of the camera. If we didn't have our standoffs on, this probably would have been a little bit easier. But hey, live and learn. As long as we get it plugged in. So camera is now plugged in. Side plates for the camera are on. The next step we're going to need is our VTX and our antenna and our SMA plate. So same thing as earlier. You've got the big lip on the bottom, short lip on the top. It's going to slide down right in the back. So you can put this anywhere you want, or you don't even have to use this if you don't want to. I like it. I haven't broken it yet. I don't know.
Nice.
How's your experience been with it?
So far, I haven't had any issues.
Yeah.
Mine has not broken, and I've had quite a few crashes.
Yeah. So I mean, I like it on the bottom. So I'm gonna put it on the bottom. Just kind of screw it in. If you need to file out that a little bit, one thing that I do that's a little bit different is I'd like to take a little rubber O-ring and put around this SMA connector on the front and the back. And all that does is once I put the antenna on, it allows the rubber to kind of squeeze on the carbon fiber, because it does move around a little bit, which isn't a bad thing, but I'm just that way, I guess. If you want to just take your hand in here and hold those antennas
Yeah, I'll
up
hold
for me
those antennas right there for you.
for a second.
Hold them back like that.
Just gonna plug in my VTX.
We'll plug and play there.
And once it's plugged in and secured, we're just gonna slide it down and put the little VTX forward into place. Maybe. All right, you're good, brother. Thank you, sir.
No problem, sir.
And
teamwork makes the dream work.
There's that. So I like to leave it flat like that. Props, nothing's going to hit it, and it allows us good access to change channels and bands. So now that we have all our plates and everything in line, now we just lay our antennas down. Take these, you got the slots that your 3 vertical boards are going to slide into, and squeeze it just a little bit. Make sure your camera is still in position. So since your camera has that tension on it to help it stay without moving, you have to squeeze your plate just a little bit. Once you squeeze it, you just slide it in. Line up your SMA plate in the back, it'll pop down. And now we're going to come up here and use these M3 6mm screws, and we'll need 6 of these, and these are just going to secure our top plate in. So we've dumped a few of them out. Just kind of get them started. I always like to go opposite corners just to get the top plate held on. Right. That way I don't have to worry about things moving around, especially if these camera plates are a little tight. It becomes a pain in the tuchus to hold them, and if you're working by yourself especially.
Right. But today we're not.
Yeah, today we have friends.
Well, friends. Working, playing, flying with friends.
Yes.
We're all about.
That's exactly right. That's all we're doing, finishing this up real quick. And then we're pretty much finished. And since we have the top on, I just want to go through and just kind of touch up the bottom just to make sure all my screws are secured.
Make sure they're tight.
Yeah.
Don't want any don't want any mistakes or mishaps.
Nothing flying off.
That's right.
And even when you go to fly, you know, after the first couple flights especially, just double check all your screws.
Yep.
Especially the motor screws. So here is our camera, and you can see it's touching just a little bit, but it's a fairly decent angle, especially for beginner intermediate. So with the way we have it set in here with the holes towards the front, our camera is a little bit further out, but it's allowing the camera to hit the standoff. So that pretty much stops you at about a 25-degree angle. If you switch these 2 side plates around, it'll move the hole back further, and we'll actually be able to bring the camera tilt way up. So it's just, you know, personal preference. And then, like I said before, if you wanted it so far as to go to actually drill multiple holes in, you could have more degree of angle tilt depending on how you fly. So with that said, we're pretty much done. The next step that I'm going to do, just to get these antennas out of the way before we do anything, run them up through these little antenna slots. I need 2 zip ties. So this is a pretty neat part, depending on how you want to do it. Yeah, you can run your antennas anywhere you want, but these 2 holes here allow us to bring our antennas up, put a zip tie on each side, and heat shrink them down to where you can actually get an angle with them. Yeah, I use the smaller zip ties. Just run it through and cinch them down. And once we get the heat shrink on and put some heat to it, then you can actually angle them a little bit more to however you want to do it. I like mine facing up a little bit just to keep them out of the props. And we'll use some of the black heat shrink that we have here. Now when I'm doing this, I like to layer the heat shrink, and it just makes it a little bit stiffer. So we'll line this up, cut a piece off, and just cut a few of them. And pretty much all we're doing is having 2 layers gives us a little bit more stiffness. And if you go to roll and you hit the ground, it tries to hold your antennas up instead of just letting them go in and get chopped to pieces.
Yeah, you don't want to chop any antennas, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's not the end of the world because we can replace them, but
you don't really want to do that.
No, you want to
be able to fly.
Try to keep everything together. So there's that. So we're going to heat shrink this first set down. Let's try to get those antennas about even. There we go. You can see how I'm heating up the inside of them. It tends to bend them up a little bit.
Nice.
If you heat the back side of them, it'll bend them backwards. More, yeah. So I like to start with the side that I want it to face towards first.
It's a quality throw process.
Yeah. Well, after you do it a few times, and then even while they're cool or while they're cooling, you can bend them, or just hold them in the orientation you want them as they cool, and then once they cool, they're pretty much stuck how you have them.
Awesome.
So now just for the second layer of heat shrink, it's easy as just sliding it down and heating them up again. Same thing with this one, how it's facing out a little bit more. I'm just gonna kind of hold it while I'm putting some heat to it to help bend it into position. And these are, you know, like I said, these are a little bit long, so if we wanted to, we could actually get it out of the heat shrink, bring it inside the frame, loop them up a little bit, and then just bring the outside of it out. So what's actually grabbing the signal is that little piece of silver at the end of the antenna. Yeah, so you don't need all of this, all of the wire out. It just allows you a better chance of grabbing the signal, you know.
Nice.
So we finished our build for the most part up to this point. ESCs we left naked just to be able to make sure everything's going to be fine once we program it. So now we open the computer. I've already got the Betaflight configurator. Again, the links for all this will be in the description. So Betaflight configurator is open. Take our micro USB cord into the naze. Come to the Betaflight configurator, firmware flasher. And all you have to do is, if you need the update of firmware, is Google Betaflight. When it comes up, just find the one for what you're using. The most up-to-date we used was Betaflight 3.0. Hit open and flash firmware. If it happens to time out on you, all you have to do is click flash firmware again and it'll go ahead and go through easily. Now that it's done and successful, we'll hit connect. And you can see, since we installed it with the arrow pointed to the front, arrows on the front when we pick it up, and everything's working. Lay it flat on the desk, hit calibrate accelerometer. Just takes a second and we're done. And we'll start going down through the menus. On ports, if you're using S-Bus, you would configure it here. We're not, so we'll go on to configuration. If you're using the same ESCs that come into PowerPack E, one shot 125 is already enabled on them, so you don't have to change anything. Minimum throttle we will change to 1000. We are using PPM today, so hit PPM, leave Spectrum 1024. And your gyro and PID loop frequencies, it's a little bit more advanced stuff, but on the naze we're just going to leave it as 1K and 1K and save and reboot. Once it reboots, we'll come on down to PID tuning. For starting off with this, just leave it on Betaflight PID controller and default PIDs. For my rates, on RC rate for roll and pitch, I run 1.1 and 0.8 for rate on roll and pitch. On yaw, I run 1.2 and 0.75. So that's all we change on this screen, and hit save. Our receiver tab, we don't need to do anything yet. Go down to modes. For my personal preference, I like to use ARM and air mode on the same switch. And for my switch, it's aux2. And I like it to be on the switch when the switch is high. So you can set this up however you want to set it up and save on this screen. Next screen we need to go to would be motors. And all we're going to do now is calibrate our ESCs. So to do that, make sure your propellers are off. Turn the switch on that says you understand the risks, and move the master slider all the way to the top. Take your battery, plug it in, listen for the beeps. When they finish, take your master slider, slide it all the way to the bottom. It'll finish up. Just cycle it by unplugging your battery and plugging it right back in. Click the master slider and just use your arrow to walk it up. So the motor started turning, but you can hear they're not turning smoothly. So bring it on up to where they're finally starting to turn really smooth. And we're going to call it, we'll take it to 1016. So at 1016, they're running really smooth right now. So just turn off the motor test mode, unplug your battery, go back to configuration, and change your minimum throttle to what we just found. So 1017 was mine. Yours may be different, which isn't a big deal. You just want to look for that time when the motors sound really smooth. Hit save and reboot. Once it reboots, go back to your motors tab. Turn on motor test mode, plug a battery in. So we want to test motor direction now. So hit your master slider and just walk it up. So bring it up to where it's running smoothly. Motor 1 is clockwise, so we're good. Motor 2 is running clockwise, so motor 2 is backwards. Motor 3 is backwards, and motor 4 is correct. So we need to change motor 2 and motor 3 in the BLHeli software. So we'll unplug our battery, disconnect, and at this time we're done with Betaflight. So we'll click over to the BLHeli software, and when you open it, go to select Atmel SI Labs interface, and make sure the SI Labs BLHeli bootloader clean flight is selected. Come down to your port, and it's the Silicon Labs. On mine it's COM20, yours may be different, and connect. Once you hit connect, plug your battery in, props are still off, hit read setup. And when you read the setup, you can see ESC 1 through 4, everything has revision 14.6, and hit OK. If you need to flash, you can hit flash BLHeli. It automatically chooses which ESCs you have. You're using a multi-rotor, and you can pick which latest version of BLHeli you want to use. And then you just go through all the motions of hitting OK and yes to all the pop-up menus, and it will go through and flash all 4 ESCs for you one at a time. So once you get that done, we need to change motor 2 and 3 direction. So at the bottom you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you want to flash all 4 ESCs, you just turn all the numbers on. If you want to work with only 1, just turn off the other 3. So we're using single ESC number 2. Motor direction is reversed. Right setup. Right is OK. Hit OK. And do the same thing to motor number 3. Motor direction reversed. Right setup. OK. And disconnect. So we are done at that point. The only thing we have to do now is bind the transmitter. Alright, so on the Taranis, come over to create model.
Switch warning.
Comes up. She's fussy. Go to a quadcopter that looks weird. And throttle should be channel 3. So just hit enter. Use your arrows, make it channel 3, hit enter again, hit page. Roll will be channel 1, so enter, down, enter. Page will be so pitch will be channel 2. So enter, down, enter. And yaw will be channel 4. So channel 4, hit page. So 3, 1, 2, 4. Enter long to confirm. And now we're just going to bind. So when you bind, you come back here. If your screen looks like this, model selection, model 2, hit page, model setup, scroll up, change D16, which is mode D16, to D8. So enter, up, enter, then down to bind and hit enter. While it's beeping, spin this around so it's easier to see. There's a little button on the top of your receiver. Push and hold it in as you plug the battery. Get your red flashing light. Hit exit on your transmitter. Unplug the battery. Then we can just plug it right back in, just make sure it bound. So we have a green light on the receiver. So we're good to go. So now we'll go through and set up our arm switch.
Telemetry lost.
So menu, get back to model selection, page over. On mixer, go down to channel 6, long enter, source, hit enter on source, and then just flip your switch that you want to use to arm with. So I chose SD, which is top right. Hit exit one more time, and exit again. pops back. Channel 6 is SD. So now we're going to page over one to servos. Scroll down to channel 6. And on this one, all the way down on SD is high. And I want it to where all the way up is high. So just to change the direction of that switch, we're on channel 6, hit enter. Push the down all the way over to this little arrow that says direction. Just hit enter and it swaps the direction. So at that point you just hit exit all the way back to the main screen. And if you want to verify everything as you're doing this, all you have to do is plug the quad in to Betaflight. When you plug it into Betaflight, you hit connect. So we have our Betaflight open, we connected, go down to receiver tab, and nothing is moving around and you have no control. So we need to plug a battery in to get the receiver to turn on.
Telemetry recovered.
So props are still off and you can see our numbers are moving. However, we have a slight roll. So your center, you want all the centers to be as close to 1500 as you can. And if you see on our roll axis, it's actually at 1505, causing it to slowly roll in one direction. So the way we fix that is hit menu and page over until you find your servo tab, so servos, and roll is channel 1. So hit enter, down to subtrim, hit enter, and this is where we want to change it. So you can watch the numbers here on the screen, and we're going to just hit down until we get as close to 1500 as we can. So right there it's walking between 1499 1501, so we'll call that good. Hit enter to lock it in. And now we want to set our endpoint. So your endpoint should be from 1000 to 2000. So if you hold hard left, you can see it's showing 991, so we want that to be 1000. So hit down, you have minimum, hit enter, and we're just going to walk that up. So you can hold your roll to the left and just start walking it up. So I'm watching the numbers on the screen. Once it gets close to 1000, we're going to stop. So right there, about as close as we're going to get. It's holding pretty solid at 1000 right now. So we're going to do the same thing to the maximum side. So it's showing 2015. We need to get that as close to 2000 as we can. Hit enter to lock the one in, down to come to your max, enter, and we're going to walk it down to 2000. So we're at 2000, hit enter to lock it in. So now your midpoint is perfect and your endpoints are locked in. If you need to go in and change your pitch, yaw, and throttles at all, you can do so doing the same movements that we just did. So, you know, channel 2, 3, 4, however you want to do it, you know, it's totally up to you. And the one thing that we do want to check on mine, aux2, that is my arm switch and air mode, and I want it to arm and air mode at high. So you can see my switch is all the way down, which is good. Mid and high should arm it. So we are good. Now all we have to do is wrap it up and go fly. So now we're just going to dress it up and finalize everything. So the first thing I want to do is on my ESCs when I'm flying, and like we said earlier in the video, especially if you're using these these durable props, they don't really want to break. So if you hit something, it's going to come around and hit that ESC. So a little thing that I was taught was to take a old durable prop, cut off just enough to overlap the ESC, and you're going to tape that down just on top of it just to protect it a little bit. There's other options out there as far as, you know, 3D printing, different things like that, but for a nice, cheap, easy way to get it done and still have great benefit, this is what I do. So just lay the prop down or pick it up, lay it on the tape, and then we're just going to wrap the arm with some electrical tape. I would rather have it protected than pretty. Alrighty, so electrical tape and pieces of prop might not be the prettiest solution to this, I mean, you can do it like on mine, my personal FT210 is just heat shrink around your ESC and a little bit of double-sided tape to just stick it down, and it looks good. But if you look here on this ESC, there's a little bit of a tear where my prop's already gouged into that ESC, and I just got lucky to where all it did was cut the heat shrink and didn't break the ESC. So for me personally, I would rather have it look a little weird and be protected than look good and be broke. So the next thing, one other thing we have to do is with this VTX and the little rubber grommets that I usually like to put on this, it will hold it solid, but with the way we installed it today, it's still a little loose. So let's take a little bit of double-sided tape on the bottom of the VTX and just stick it down to that base plate. That'll keep it from moving around too much on us. All right, so we can check the FPV real quick before we throw props on it. Just turn our screen on. Screen, goggles, whatever you have. So that's powered on. Let's go ahead and power on FT210, and boom. You know that guy. There we go. We have video. It actually looks really good. Let's arm it and see if we have any kind of video scratch from the motors. Looks great. Looking good.
TJ, hey man, thanks so much for coming and doing this build with us. It's awesome. It looks great.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it, man. It turned out really well. I hope everybody that followed along actually learned something. If at any time you need anything, look in the description for the links. I want to go fly it. Can we go fly it?
I'm looking forward to it. I've been watching you build for the last however long.
Yeah.
I want to get this thing in the air. Let's get it going, huh?
Let's go. Alright, Tom, come here.
There we go.
Smile for the camera.
Yo!
There you go.